What if the glamorous legends of Hollywood's golden age had taken one last close-up? Not on film, but on the pages of their own private diaries. What hidden addictions, forbidden affairs, or aching vulnerabilities would spill from those ink-blotted margins when the lock finally snapped open? Tonight, we turn those fragile pages together and discover the shocking truths that these icons took to their graves, only to have them revealed after the curtain fell on their final act. Greta Garbo. Few sentences in any diary have caused such archival heartburn as Garbo's terse lament. Mercedes and I share a darkness no camera can catch. When the Rosenbach Museum in Philadelphia unsealed 87 of Garbo's personal letters in 2000, most addressed to playwright and poet Mercedes Diacosta, the quiet, reclusive image of Hollywood's most mysterious star cracked open. Hidden in those correspondences were 181 coded pet names, many of which could only be deciphered through cross-referencing Garbo's own annotations with Diacosta's memoirs. The collection included 43 meticulously saved train ticket stubs between New York and secluded getaways, and receipts from 46 hotel stays booked under aliases. While the romance had long been speculated in Hollywood circles, the emotional and logistical records embedded in these letters gave scholars the closest thing to confirmation. But Garbo was more than a closeted romantic. She was an obsessive data keeper. Her notebooks, also found alongside the letters, included precise tables of her shooting day weight, blood pressure levels recorded during long production weeks, and even curious entries like audience size counted at premiere, 42. One particularly telling 1933 entry detailed her total studio fines, $15,300 when adjusted for inflation, accrued for refusing promotional interviews and public appearances. "Silence is cheaper than lawyers," she wrote, underlining the sentence twice. MGM, embarrassed and alarmed, allegedly offered a large sum to suppress publication of the letters, but the museum refused. Perhaps the most heart-wrenching entry came on May 12, 1937. "The cloud again, a Swedish winter in my skull." Mental health historians now view Garbo's writings as early documentation of what may have been chronic depression. Her language, emotionally restrained but piercing, has led scholars to redefine her not just as an iconic screen siren, but as an early LGBTQ figure navigating mental illness and fame in complete isolation. Joan Crawford. It was a sweltering afternoon in June 2024 when researchers at the Margaret Herrick Library sliced the string on a battered Mead composition notebook marked in fading ink. JC, My Eyes Only. What followed was a media firestorm, as the pages inside turned out to be a raw, obsessive, and often cruel record of Joan Crawford's private world. A sharp contrast to the studio-manufactured icon of maternal devotion and screen elegance. The notebook contained page after page of daily logs, box office grosses written in red ink, calorie counts to the decimal point, and, most sensationally, personal rankings of rival actresses. "Davis 8 wrinkles," she wrote. "Stanwyck 5. Faye needs lessons in rage." Crawford's disdain for her contemporaries wasn't limited to critique. She also documented what she perceived as backstabbing from industry insiders, listing names beside brief descriptions like "spills secrets to columnists" and "laughs too long at Bet's jokes." 17 pages focused on a secret affair with a 19-year-old co-star during the filming of Mildred Pierce. The entries included taped Polaroids, and stapled beneath them were wire transfer receipts, payments made, it seems, to keep the affair buried. Also, among the pages, was a fully drafted press release for her own funeral. It was complete with stage directions, lighting instructions, and the desired closing quote, "She died, as always, lit from the left." One of the most startling revelations was the contrast between Crawford's real experiences and her daughter Christina's explosive memoir, Mommy Dearest. While some entries seem to refute aspects, such as a celebratory April 1963 note, No wire hangers this week. Victory. Others supported claims of emotional volatility. A pulse reading, logged after a gin night, spiked at 140 beats per minute. Noted beneath the line, "Screamed at Helga for no reason." People magazine reported over 12 million views within 2 days of the Diaries leak. Film historians saw it not as a takedown, but a deeper insight into an obsessively image-conscious woman who feared irrelevance more than infamy. Crawford's own diary showed a woman not just playing a part, but directing the scene, even in her darkest moments. Marilyn Monroe. The breathless coup of Marilyn Monroe still echoes in pop culture, but it's the scribbled thoughts in her private notebooks that speak volumes louder. Published posthumously in the 2010 collection Fragments, these 169 diary entries and torn pieces of hotel stationery peeled away the peroxide veneer of Monroe's public persona, revealing the interior world of a woman swinging between artistic ambition, mental anguish, and desperate loneliness. One entry scrawled on the Waldorf Astoria hotel paper notes 32 press photographers outside at 6:17 a.m. Smile anyway. Another includes a secondal dosage calculation, 1.5 tablets 3 times a day, followed by a hand-drawn heart, cracked down the middle. Monroe's handwriting often deteriorated in moments of emotional intensity. Experts later correlated this with her increasing dependence on barbiturates and erratic therapy sessions. The most shocking finds were 9 unsent letters. One pleaded with Joe DiMaggio to, "Please take me home." Another warned President John F. Kennedy, "You risk history's pity if you forget your promises." But the most haunting was addressed to herself. "Keep the light on." Monsters hate light. Forensic ink analysis revealed that her final entry, "Fear is a room without doors," was written fewer than 36 hours before her death in August 1962. Alongside the psychological turmoil, the diaries also contained biting social commentary. In one entry, she logs that Robert Mitchum made $175,000 for River of No Return, while she earned $100,000. "Smile anyway," she wrote beside it, an oft-quoted line among biographers and feminist historians alike. The journals also confirmed that Monroe had been diagnosed with cyclothymic mood swings, a term which today would fall under the umbrella of bipolar spectrum disorder. Her writings offer not just insight into the sex symbol's pain, but her deep self-awareness. "I know I am fiction to them," she wrote, "but I have to live in nonfiction." The world wanted a fantasy, and Marilyn gave it to them. But Norma Jean, the girl behind the glitter, was busy writing her truth in pen. Vivian Leigh. Vivian Leigh's on-screen elegance, immortalized in roles like Scarlett O'Hara and Blanche Dubois, belied a life meticulously measured in margins. When the Victoria and Albert Museum acquired her extensive archive in 2013, they found a treasure trove. 7,500 personal items including letters, photographs, and most notably, diaries dating from her teenage years until just days before her death in 1967. One of the most infamous entries comes from June 10, 1937. "Told Lee, Holman, left with Larry," she wrote, marking the day she ended her marriage and began the tumultuous relationship with Laurence Olivier. The entry became a cornerstone for biographers tracing the trajectory of her personal and professional lives. What emerged was a portrait of a woman trying to maintain control in an increasingly chaotic world. The diaries document 22 manic episodes and 5 major depressive crashes. She would often use coded symbols to track her mental state, later confirmed by medical records as consistent with what is now known as bipolar disorder. During the troubled filming of Elephant Walk, Lee penned the chilling line, "Saw tigers today, and tigers inside." She was eventually replaced by Elizabeth Taylor due to a breakdown. Another revealing layer of her psyche was her obsession with metrics. She scored each opening night from applause intensity 1 to 10, and even calculated the acoustics of different theaters. Financially, she was just as meticulous. A war bond ledger lists £54,220 in personal purchases, roughly £2.4 million today, alongside monthly dividends, acting stipends, and donation receipts. A 1949 entry dissecting Olivier's stage performance reads, Hamlet's Kiss, 68% stage, 32% mine. Her private calculations of intimacy blurred lines between performance and passion, underscoring how much of her real self was lost in roles others handed her. As public applause swelled, Vivien Leigh's voice became more statistical, more clinical, as if data could save her from emotional ruin. Behind the Oscar-winning glamour was a woman measuring her mental health by the volume of a standing ovation. Rock Hudson. The world first learned that Rock Hudson was dying of AIDS in July 1985, a moment that shocked not only Hollywood, but the American public. Yet his personal Paris journal, a collection of 56 handwritten pages smuggled home by a nurse after he collapsed at the Ritz, reveals that Hudson had known the truth for much longer and had been keeping meticulous records of his decline. One of the first pages begins with stark clinical detachment. T cells, 17. Weight, 143 pounds. Shame, immeasurable. These weren't random scribbles. The diary serves as a comprehensive account of medical symptoms, including pre-heart drug regimens, reactions to experimental AZT treatments, and the emotional toll of hiding his illness. He even included a table comparing studio insurance payouts to potential career loss if he went public. A tragic calculus only a Hollywood insider could make. Margin notes speak volumes. Call Doris Day? Voice will crack. Reads one, referring to his longtime friend and co-star. Another entry documents a secret 1963 meeting with Ronald Reagan at a charity gala. Ron smiled like he didn't know, Hudson wrote, suggesting the former actor and then politician had quietly distanced himself from the rumors that shadowed Hudson's personal life. What startled both fans and historians were the notes about his efforts to maintain a heterosexual image. He described orchestrating 38 staged photo ops with various actresses over 2 decades to fend off questions about his sexuality. HBO's 2023 documentary, All That Heaven Allows, featured dramatic reenactments of these entries, giving voice to what Hudson called living in third-person drag. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor's Blue Room was legendary among those who worked closely with her. A vault-like suite in her Bel Air mansion, it was said to house her most personal treasures, jewelry, love letters, scripts, and, as revealed after her death in 2011, over 7,000 pages of private diary entries. In 2022, biographer Kate Anderson Brower was granted unprecedented access. What she found wasn't the musings of a diva, but the ledgers of a woman who kept exacting records of a life lived both in public glare and private pain. The first entry from Cleopatra's tumultuous shoot reads, Budget at $2 million. Already smells like Pharaoh no. By the end of filming, Taylor had logged every major overrun, noting how the final cost ballooned to $44 million, a staggering amount for the time. In the margins, she doodled sketches of the Krupp diamond before she owned it, captioned Someday, foretelling the world-famous gem Richard Burton would later give her. The diaries covered her 8 marriages with extraordinary precision. Richard Burton appears 1,392 times. Her final husband, Larry Fortensky, only 27. She documented arguments, reconciliations, and even jewelry appraisals next to emotional scores. Fight level, 6 out of 10. Recovery champagne equals Krug, 2 glasses. Her struggle with addiction is laid bare too. Following her 1961 tracheotomy, Taylor logs every Demerol injection with timestamps and pain ratings. One standout entry from 1985 details her personal efforts to raise funds for AIDS research. 17 calls, $47 million pledged, not counting Sinatra's check. Her advocacy wasn't abstract. She audited her own impact down to the dollar. The diaries also delve into Hollywood inequality. A comparison chart contrasts her Cleopatra salary, $1 million, with Audrey Hepburn's My Fair Lady, pay $750,000. Next to it, she quips, "Sorry, Audrey, get a volcano." With wit, pain, and clarity, Taylor's diaries reveal her not just as a film icon, but as a shrewd negotiator, a self-aware addict, and a philanthropist who knew her power and its price. James Dean. James Dean's death at just 24 cemented his image as the ultimate rebel icon. But a 2023 estate auction changed that narrative, revealing a deeply insecure, vulnerable young man struggling under the weight of his myth. Among 500 personal artifacts from the estate of his agent, Jane Deasy, was a 60-page handwritten diary, one that completely reframed Dean's legend. The most chilling page features a rough pencil sketch of his Porsche 550 Spider, the car he would die in. Underneath it, the caption, "Speed is only borrowed." Throughout the diary, Dean kept a list titled, "Fears I Pretend Are Thrills," a tally that reached 92 by August 1955. These fears included abandonment, exposure, and irrelevance. He also kept a brutal rejection ledger, listing every role he didn't get, From Here to Eternity, Picnic, The Silver Chalice. For each, he scribbled a countercolumn. "I'll show them." That list grew longer than the rejection column. Film historians noted his obsession with quantifying everything. He charted RPMs on his motorcycle, cigarette brand preferences per day, and even scent categories of fan mail: musk, gardenia, tobacco. One candid and previously unknown revelation is a description of a 1954 tryst with a studio executive, traded, as he put it, for a Buick and a promise. This single line shattered the image of Dean as a self-made outsider, revealing instead a young actor navigating the same power games that shaped so many careers in mid-century Hollywood. In a letter never mailed to choreographer Jack Simmons, Dean confessed, "The mask sticks tighter after every autograph." The diary was auctioned for $850,000, becoming one of the most expensive personal journals in film history. Rather than glorify rebellion, Dean's pages expose a young man calculating his legacy in advance, choking on the price of fame before he'd even finished paying for it. Cary Grant. Cary Grant, the paragon of suave masculinity and on-screen composure, left behind not pages, but tapes. Hours of raw, vulnerable recordings made during more than 100 LSD-assisted psychotherapy sessions conducted between 1958 and 1961. In January 2024, these 17 hours of LSD session transcripts were unsealed from the archives of the Janiger Clinic, revealing Grant's voice, cracking through layers of repression, self-analysis, and psychedelic catharsis. "I am the statue of my own studio publicity. Watch me melt," he begins in the first session. Grant discusses the trauma of his childhood, abandonment by his father, the institutionalization of his mother, whom he believed dead until adulthood, and the lifelong identity fragmentation that followed. In one moment of hallucinatory insight, he identifies 16 internal personalities, from the dancer to the tailor to the abandoned boy, and then jokingly adds, "I let the confident one take Deanne Cannon to dinner." His financial records for the sessions were precise: $150 per visit, billed to a Swiss account discreetly labeled self-reconstruction. Over the years, that totaled $15,000, over $150,000 in today's money. During session 11, he discussed orchestrating press leaks to boost his immaculate suit image as a countermeasure to rumors of a romantic relationship with actor Randolph Scott. The New York Post published excerpts in January 2024 under the headline, "Cary Tripped 100 Times and Found Himself." The article went viral as film lovers realized that Grant had pioneered psychedelic-assisted therapy long before it was considered respectable. even as he continued to star in studio hits like North by Northwest. Far from undermining his image, the tapes humanized him. Grant wasn't faking charm. He was manufacturing survival. Through the lens of LSD, he explored not only his trauma, but the unbearable expectations of being Cary Grant. His real story wasn't written in lipstick and laughter. It was recorded between sobs and sighs, into a microphone taped to his chest. Judy Garland. For Judy Garland, the stage was both sanctuary and battlefield. When a tiny spiral-bound notebook dated 1967 surfaced at Julian's auctions in 2012, fans expected showbiz trivia. What they found instead was a 9-page pharmaceutical map of survival. The first line: another opening, another dosage. The entries aren't poetic, they're clinical. Seconal 12, Ritalin 6, Dexedrine 8. These weren't just pills. They were alarms, routines, lifelines. Garland logged them like choreography. Each tablet timed to coincide with show cues, press calls, and moments when a smile had to look effortless. She even tracked hotel room temperatures. Ideal, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, as if colder or warmer air might make her fall apart. On one page, Garland lists her mounting debts like lines from a tragic ballad. IRS: $125,000. Agents: $71,000. Wardrobe advance: $34,000. But the most devastating line appears beside her London address. Audiences stand because I can't. Her physical pain, mental exhaustion, and financial pressure turned every performance into an act of pure will. The notebook also includes a bitter anecdote: an aborted attempt to co-star in a film with daughter Liza Minnelli. "Studio wants insurance forms longer than my script," she scribbled. Her career was now a liability. Yet, even amid despair, Garland's wit sparkles. One audience was rated swell, Clapton key. These wry, sometimes heartbreaking notes lend credibility to biographer Gerald Clark's claim that Garland slept just 4 hours out of every 24 and lived in a medicated blur. When the notebook was previewed at auction, bids quickly surpassed $30,000, putting a price tag of about $3,300 on each handwritten line. The journal was no longer just memorabilia. It was a ledger of resilience, a diary of dependence, and a final aria written not in song, but in milligrams. Richard Burton. If Elizabeth Taylor's diaries are jewelry-studded negotiation logs, Richard Burton's are scotch-soaked literary confessionals. Published in full in 2012 by Yale University Press, Burton's 475,000-word diary has become one of the most unfiltered celebrity accounts ever released, spanning alcoholism, obsession, brilliance, and the emotional wreckage of love with Elizabeth. The diary reads like a novel. One 1966 entry appraises their jewel collection at $5.5 million. A few lines later, Burton writes, "Regrets not to be pawned." He charts every argument with Taylor. 25 major fights documented in vivid prose. One fight is followed by an entry noting, "Champagne truce, signed at 3:12 a.m." and a tally of kisses needed to secure peace. Burton was a compulsive statistician of the self. He logged his weight fluctuations, rugby match scores, and even the temperature of scotch. Optimal, slightly above wrist pulse. During a particularly grim March 1971 entry, he estimates his blood alcohol level at 0.4 after a bender. Technically dead, pretending actor. Despite this, the diary never asks for pity. Burton is painfully self-aware, often mocking his own excess. When not spiraling, he turns to literature. He notes finishing Thomas Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles at 3:17 a.m., while Taylor snores. He calls it, "the only noble woman I've loved who never shouted." Psychiatrists have cited the diary for its clear indicators of narcissism and addiction. Literary scholars, however, praise it as a rare glimpse of modern Welsh prose, raw and volcanic. And for fans, it's a love story, a tragedy, and a mirror turned inward. Ingrid Bergman. When Ingrid Bergman said, "A diary keeps the actress honest. The actress repays by lying to the diary," she was half joking. But the 7,000 pages stored at the Swedish Film Institute in Stockholm suggest she knew exactly what she was doing. In 2015, the Cannes-lauded documentary Ingrid Bergman, in her own words, pulled from this treasure trove, revealing a woman who chronicled her personal life as meticulously as her scripts. A single line at age 12 reads, "I will be famous." Note this. By the time she was 30, she had starred in Casablanca, Gaslight, and Spellbound. But in 1947, the tone of her diaries shifted dramatically. A secret letter to Italian director Roberto Rossellini, never mailed, but logged and sealed, stated, "I burn to make films and children with you." The letter was prophetic. Within 2 years, Bergman would leave her American husband and young daughter to begin a scandalous affair with Rossellini, ultimately bearing him 3 children. The fallout was vicious. Her diaries log, 204 editorials condemning me, 7 Senate speeches, 0 studio offers. In 1952, she jotted the weight of every suitcase she carried to Rome under a false name, down to the half kilo, and created aliases for her twins' christening records to avoid press interference. Yet she tracked her own redemption with equal precision. After winning an Oscar for Anastasia in 1957, she wrote, "Academy forgives. Public forgets 37%. A later page becomes a chemo diary, white blood cell counts, radiation schedules, all surrounded by delicate hand-drawn lilies labeled "for courage." Historians view these writings as those of a master tactician. Bergman wasn't just surviving the scandal. She was architecting her return. The diaries show a woman less concerned with fame than with legacy. She didn't just write about what happened. She measured it, weighed it, and ensured it added up. Montgomery Clift. The legend of Montgomery Clift has long centered around his haunting performances and the car crash in 1956 that altered both his face and his fate. But in 2021, when his estate opened a long-sealed box marked simply logs, what they found wasn't poetic longing or brooding reflections. It was a clinical archive of physical and emotional decline, compiled by Clift himself with the discipline of a wartime medic. Each entry starts with a timestamp, followed by detailed pain assessments. Left eye mobility, 38% of right. Pain level, 8.4 at lunch, 9.2 by curtain. These were not occasional notes. They were daily, sometimes hourly. The pages include diagrams of nerve damage and sketches of his own profile, annotated with comments like tightness increasing, cheek droop visible. Even more painful was the section marked roles lost. 14 entries, each a major studio production, include On the Waterfront, which would go on to win Brando his Oscar. Clift's note beside it reads, "Offered, revoked, face not bankable." He meticulously calculated the income lost per rejection. The final tally, $722,800 in lost roles, equivalent to over $6 million today. He also tracked substance use with mathematical rigor. Each pill or drink had a column, milligrams, timing, and function pain, sleep, social, etc. One entry pairs a barbiturate with a scotch. 3:12 p.m. First sip. Feel better equals no. Feel human equals maybe. Letters found hidden in a pocket of the journal include one to Elizabeth Taylor, expressing both admiration and desperation. "You still glow." "I do not." Another was never sent. A single sentence written to himself. Not wrecked by the crash. Wrecked by the mirror. Clift's diary is not a lament. It is a ledger of pain, rejection, and resilience. It reframes his downfall not as inevitable tragedy, but as death by numbers, tallied with heartbreaking precision. Bette Davis. Bette Davis never pulled punches on screen or on paper. In 2023, Sotheby's auctioned off her personal annotated shooting scripts and a cache of diary pages that revealed a mind sharp enough to slice glass. Among the revelations, a running scorecard of her legendary feud with Joan Crawford, penciled in the margins of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Davis 1, Crawford 0, appears in neat script beside an early rehearsal note. Below, she documents, Joan wore ankle weights. Sabotage confirmed. Studio records later supported her claim that Crawford gained weight before scenes requiring Davis to drag her across the set. A petty but calculated power move. Davis documented 27 such incidents in total. The diary also includes candid evaluations of her own diminishing star power. Next to her 1962 salary, she jots 47% of 1942 rate. Worth 200% more than they know. Medical notes scattered throughout detail her fight with Bell's palsy. Right facial mobility, 68%. Compensate with lighting. She even included diagrams of camera angles she insisted upon to hide her condition. But perhaps the most poignant line comes on May 10, 1977, the day Crawford died. On an otherwise blank page, Davis wrote, "The scoreboard breaks. Final tally uncertain." This, from the woman who once said, "You should never say bad things about the dead. You should only say good." Joan Crawford is dead. Good. Sotheby's valued the collection at $1.7 million, and it became the subject of numerous academic papers on women's power in mid-century Hollywood. Davis's diary isn't just a record of a rivalry. It's a battle plan, a medical file, and a business ledger rolled into one. Every underline and margin note reveals a mind fighting to stay in control in a town built on controlled illusions. Charlie Chaplin. Behind the slapstick brilliance of The Little Tramp was a man who believed that comedy could be calculated. In 2019, the Vive Museum in Switzerland opened a long-held collection of Charlie Chaplin's personal ledgers and diaries from 1915 to 1923. What they found were notebooks filled with equations, stopwatch times, and meticulous diagrams of laughter, not jokes. Each sketch and scene from The Kid or The Immigrant had its own entry. Chaplin tracked laughs like an engineer, adjusting frame rates, beat pauses, and shot lengths according to audience response during test screenings. He even measured respiratory rhythms of audiences in silent theaters, recording, in one instance, collective intake before pratfall, synchronized. Beyond comedy, Chaplin's notes reveal a deep political paranoia. He kept a blacklist of names labeled probable informants, 14 in total. Later, FBI files confirmed 11 of them as real government operatives embedded in Hollywood's left-leaning circles. He also documented transferring $4.8 million, roughly $78 million today, into discrete European accounts from 1949 onward, anticipating his exile during the McCarthy era. One heartbreaking page dated 1952, just before leaving America for good, simply reads, 43 years in America. Below it, a list of accomplishments, each crossed out in thick red ink. In 1977, shortly before his death, Chaplin wrote one last entry, total laughter generated, SD, approximately 1.89 trillion seconds. That's 60,000 years of joy, if you do the math. Chaplin's diary proves what few suspected, that the king of physical comedy was also one of its most obsessive architects. Every banana peel, every stumble, was executed not for chaos, but for precision. In Chaplin's world, even joy had a formula. Rita Hayworth. She was dubbed the love goddess. But Rita Hayworth's final years were marked by a slow fade, not into irrelevance, but into forgetfulness. In 2018, while cataloging items for auction, archivists discovered a thin, leather-bound diary hidden inside a false-bottom makeup case. The contents stunned both historians and neurologists. A 23-year self-monitored log of cognitive decline, written by Hayworth herself from 1948 to 1971. Early entries are upbeat, if meticulous. Forgot the name of that columnist. Again. Must be the Scotch. She would jot down memory lapses, as if logging wardrobe malfunctions. But by the early 1960s, entries took on a pattern. Time to recall home address, 47 seconds. Another reads, words lost mid-sentence, 14. She routinely performed memory tests on herself, asking and answering questions like, what was my first husband's middle name? And scoring herself on accuracy and speed. Hayworth also tracked what she called her vanity metrics, 31 body measurements taken weekly, with notes like waist plus 0.4 centimeters, disaster, and thighs show filming stress. One page in 1968 notes a forgotten dance routine during rehearsal. Choreography gone. Blamed gin. Not gin. Her final coherent entry in 1976 reads simply, Rita Hayworth, forgotten by Rita Hayworth, 100%. Her daughter, Yasmin Aga Khan, later revealed that the diary helped doctors identify the early onset Alzheimer's symptoms that had gone misdiagnosed for years as alcoholism. Today, the Rita Hayworth Galas for Alzheimer's research have raised over $80 million. But more than money, Hayworth left a record few could have imagined, a performer's clinical witness to her own unraveling. Her diary isn't just a document, it's a diagnosis, decades before the world learned her name for something other than beauty. So, what do we make of these once hidden pages? These diaries that whispered truths louder than any headline ever could? Behind every glamour shot was a ledger of fears, passions, addictions, and desires, inked in private and never meant for the spotlight. And yet, here they are, giving us one final performance, not on screen, but between the lines. If these legends taught us anything, it's that fame may fade, but paper remembers. Which secret shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you love the stories Hollywood tried to bury, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.